Section 1 of the Divine Comedy. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Section 1 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. Inferno, Canto 1. Introduction to the Divine Comedy, The Wood and the Mountain.
When halfway through the journey of our life, I found that I was in a gloomy wood, because the path which led aright was lost. And how hard it is to say just what this wild and rough and stubborn woodland was, the very thought of which renews my fear. So bitter 'tis that death is little worse, but of the good to treat which there I found, I'll speak of what I else discovered there. I cannot well say how I entered it, so full of slumber was I at the moment when I forsook the pathway of the truth. But after I had reached a mountain's foot, where that vale ended which had pierced my heart with fear, I looked on high, and saw its shoulders mantled already with that planet's rays which leadeth one aright o'er every path. Then quieted a little was the fear which in the lake depths of my heart had lasted throughout the night I passed so piteously. And even as he who from the deep emerged with sorely troubled breath upon the shore, turns round and gazes at the dangerous water, even so my mind, which still was fleeing on, turned back to look again upon the pass which ne'er permitted any one to live. When I had somewhat eased my weary body, o'er the lone slope I so resumed my way that e'er the lower was my steady foot. Then lo, not far from where the ascent began, a leopard which exceeding light and swift was covered over with a spotted hide, and from my presence did not move away. Nay, rather she so hindered my advance, that more than once I turned me to go back. Some time had now from early morn elapsed, and with those very stars the sun was rising that in his escort were, when love divine in the beginning moved those beauteous things. I therefore had as cause for hoping well of that wild beast with gaily mottled skin, the hour of daytime, and the year's sweet season. But not so that I should not fear the sight, which next appeared before me, of a lion. Against me this one seemed to be advancing with head erect and with such raging hunger that even the air seemed terrified thereby. And of a she-wolf, which with every lust seemed in her leanness laden, and had caused many ere now to lead unhappy lives. The latter so oppressed me with the fear that issued from her aspect, that I lost the hope I had of winning to the top. And such as he is who is glad to gain, and who, when times arrive that make him lose, weeps and is saddened in his every thought. Such did that peaceless animal make me, which, 'gainst me coming, pushed me, step by step, back to the place where silent is the sun. While toward the lowland I was falling fast, the sight of one was offered to mine eyes, who seemed, through long continued silence, weak. When him in that vast wilderness I saw, "Have pity on me," I cried out to him, "whate'er thou be, or shade, or very man."
"Not man,"
he answered,
"I was once a man, and both my parents were of Lombardy, and mantuans with respect to fatherland. 'Neath Julius was I born, though somewhat late; and under good Augustus' rule I lived in Rome, in days of false and lying gods. I was a poet, and of that just man Anchises' son I sang, who came from Troy, after proud Ilion had been consumed. But thou, to such sore trouble why return? Why climb'st thou not the mountain of delight, which is of every joy the source and cause?"
"Art thou that Virgil, then, that fountain-head which poureth forth so broad a stream of speech?" I answered him, with shame upon my brow. "O light and glory of the other poets, let the long study and the ardent love which made me con thy book avail me now. Thou art my teacher and authority, thou only art the one from whom I took the lovely manner which hath done me honour. Behold the beast on whose account I turned. From her protect me, O thou famous sage, for she makes both my veins and pulses tremble."
A different course from this must thou pursue,
he answered, when he saw me shedding tears.
if from this wilderness thou wouldst escape, for this wild beast, on whose account thou criest, alloweth none to pass along her way, but hinders him so greatly that she kills, and is by nature so malign and guilty, that never doth she sate her greedy lust, but after food is hungrier than before. Many are the animals with which she mates, and still more will there be, until the hound shall come and bring her to a painful death. He shall not feed on either land or wealth, but wisdom, love, and power shall be his food, and 'tween two feltroes shall his birth take place. Of that low Italy he'll be the saviour, for which the maid Camilla died of wounds, with Turnus, Nisus, and Euryalus. And he shall drive her out of every town till he have put her back again in hell, from which the earliest envy sent her forth. I therefore think and judge it best for thee to follow me, and I shall be thy guide, and lead thee hence through an eternal place, where thou shalt hear the shrieks of hopelessness, of those tormented spirits of old times, each one of whom bewails the second death. Then those shalt thou behold who, though in fire, contented are, because they hope to come, whenever it be, unto the blessed folk, to whom thereafter, if thou wouldst ascend, there'll be for that a worthier soul than I. With her at my departure I shall leave thee, because the Emperor who rules up there, since I was not obedient to his law, wills none shall come into his town through me. He rules as Emperor everywhere, and there as King. There is his town and lofty throne. O happy he whom he thereto elects.
And I to him, O poet, I beseech thee, even by the God it was not thine to know. So may I from this ill and worse escape, conduct me thither where thou saidst just now, that I may see St. Peter's gate, and those whom thou describest as so whelmed with woe. He then moved on, and I behind him kept.
End of Inferno Canto 1. Section 2 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 2. Introduction to the Inferno, The Mission of Virgil.
Daylight was going, and the dusky air was now releasing from their weary toil all living things on earth, and I alone was making ready to sustain the war both of the road and of the sympathy which my unerring memory will relate. O Muses, O high genius, help me now! O memory, that wrotest what I saw, herewith shall thy nobility appear. I then began, Consider, poet, thou that guidest me, if strong my virtue be, or ere thou trust me to the arduous course. Thou sayest that the sire of Silvio entered, when still corruptible, the immortal world, and that while in his body he was there. Hence, that to him the opponent of all ill was courteous, considering the great result that was to come from him, both who and what, seems not unfitting to a thoughtful man. For he of fostering Rome and of her sway in the empyrean heaven was chosen as sire. And both of these, if one would tell the truth, were foreordained unto the holy place, where greatest Peter's follower hath his seat. While on this quest, for which thou givest him praise, he heard the things which of his victory the causes were, and of the papal robe. The chosen vessel went there afterward, to bring thence confirmation in the faith, through which one enters on salvation's path. But why should I go there, or who concedes it? I'm not Aeneas, nor yet Paul am I. Me worthy of this, nor I nor others deem. If therefore I consent to come, I fear lest foolish be my coming. Thou art wise, and canst much better judge than I can talk. And such is he who unwills what he willed, and changes so his purpose through new thoughts, that what he had begun he wholly leaves. Such on that gloomy slope did I become. For as I thought it over, I gave up the enterprise so hastily commenced.
If I have rightly understood thy words,
Replied the shade of that great-hearted man,
thy soul is hurt by shameful cowardice, which many times so sorely hinders one, that from an honoured enterprise it turns him, as seeing falsely doth a shying beast. In order that thou rid thee of this fear, I'll tell thee why I came, and what I heard the first time I was grieved on thy account. Among the intermediate souls I was, when me a lady called, so beautiful and happy that I begged her to command. Her eyes were shining brighter than a star, when sweetly and softly she began to say, as with an angel's voice she spoke to me.
O courteous Mantuan spirit, thou whose fame is still enduring in the world above, and will endure as long as lasts the world, a friend of mine, but not a friend of fortune, is on his journey o'er the lonely slope, obstructed so that he hath turned through fear, and, from what I have heard of him in heaven, I fear lest he may now have strayed so far that I have risen too late to give him help. Bestir thee then, and with thy finished speech, and with whatever his escape may need, assist him, so that I may be consoled. I, who now have thee go, am Beatrice. Thence come I, whither I would fain return. 'Twas love that moved me, love that makes me speak. When in the presence of my lord again, often shall I commend thee unto him.
Thereat she ceased to speak, and I began. O Lady of virtue, thou through whom alone the human race excels all things contained within the heaven that hath the smallest circles, thy bidding pleases me so much, that late I'd be, hadst thou already been obeyed. Thou needst but to disclose to me thy will. But tell me why thou dost not mind descending into this centre from that ample place whither thou art so eager to return.
Since thou wouldst know thereof so inwardly, I'll tell thee briefly.
She replied to me,
Why I am not afraid to enter here. Of those things only should one be afraid that have the power of doing injury, not of the rest, for they should not be feared. I of his mercy am so made by God, that me your wretchedness doth not affect, nor any flame of yonder fire molest. There is a gentle lady up in heaven, who grieves so at this check whereto I send thee, that broken is stern judgment there above. She called Lucia in her prayer, and said,
Now hath thy faithful servant need of thee, and I, too, recommend him to thy care.
Lucia, hostile to all cruelty, set forth thereat, and came unto the place where I with ancient Rachel had my seat.
Why, Beatrice,
She said,
true praise of God, dost thou not succour him who loved thee so, that for thy sake he left the common herd? Dost thou not hear the anguish of his cry? Seest not the death that fights him on the flood, o'er which the sea availeth not to boast? Ne'er were there any in the world so swift to seek their profit and avoid their loss, as I, after such words as these were uttered, descended hither from my blessed seat, confiding in that noble speech of thine, which honours thee, and whosoe'er has heard it.
Then, after she had spoken to me thus, weeping she turned her shining eyes away, which made me hasten all the more to come, and, even as she wished, I came to thee, and led thee from the presence of the beast which robbed thee of the fair mount's short approach. What is it then? Why dost thou hold back? Why dost thou lodge such baseness in thy heart, and wherefore free and daring art thou not, since three so blessed ladies care for thee within the court of heaven, and my words too give thee the promise of so much that's good?
As little flowers by the chill of night bowed down and closed, when brightened by the sun stand all erect and open on their stems, so likewise with my wearied strength did I, and such good daring coursed into my heart that I began as one who had been freed. O piteous she who hastened to my help, and courteous thou that didst at once obey the words of truth that she addressed to thee. Thou hast with such desire disposed my heart toward going on by reason of thy words, that to my first intention I've returned. Go on now, since we two have but one will, thou leader, and thou lord, and teacher thou. I thus addressed him. Then, when he had moved, I entered on the wild and arduous course.
End of Inferno, Canto 2. Section 3 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Inferno, Canto 3. The Gate and Vestibule of Hell. Cowards and Neutrals. Acheron.
Through me one goes into the town of woe. Through me one goes into eternal pain. Through me among the people that are lost. Justice inspired my high exalted Maker. I was created by the might divine, the highest wisdom and the primal love. Before me there was naught created save eternal things, and I eternal last. All hope abandon, ye that enter here. These words of gloomy colour I beheld inscribed upon the summit of a gate, whence their meaning, teacher, troubles me. And he to me, like one aware, replied,
All fearfulness must here be left behind, all forms of cowardice must here be dead. We've reached the place where, as I said to thee, thou'lt see the sad folk who have lost the good, which is the object of the intellect.
Then, after he had placed his hand in mine with cheerful face, whence I was comforted, he led me in among the hidden things. There sighs and wails and piercing cries of woe reverberated through the starless air. Hence I at first shed tears of sympathy. Strange languages and frightful forms of speech, words caused by pain, accents of anger, voices both loud and faint, and smiting hands withal, a mighty tumult made, which sweeps around for ever in that timelessly dark air, as sand is wont, whene'er a whirlwind blows. And I, whose head was girt about with horror, said, Teacher, what is this I hear? What folk is this that seems so overwhelmed with woe? And he to me,
This wretched kind of life the miserable spirits lead of those who lived with neither infamy nor praise. Commingled are they with that worthless choir of angels who did not rebel, nor yet were true to God, but sided with themselves. The heavens, in order not to be less fair, expelled them, nor doth nether hell receive them, because the bad would get some glory thence.
and I, what is it, teacher, grieves them so, it causes them so loudly to lament?
I'll tell thee very briefly,
He replied,
These have no hope of death, and so low down is this unseen life of theirs, that envious they are of every other destiny. The world allows no fame of them to live. Mercy and justice hold them in contempt. Let us not talk of them, but look and pass.
and I, who gazed intently, saw a flag which, whirling, moved so swiftly that to me contemptuous it appeared of all repose. And after it there came so long a line of people that I never would have thought that death so great a number had undone. When some I'd recognized, I saw and knew the shade of him who through his cowardice the great refusal made. I understood immediately, and was assured that this the band of cowards was, who both to God displeasing are, and to his enemies. These wretched souls, who never were alive, were naked, and were sorely spurred to action by means of wasps and hornets that were there. The latter streaked their faces with their blood, which after it had mingled with their tears was at their feet sucked up by loathsome worms. When I had given myself to peering further, people I saw upon a great stream's bank. I therefore said, Now, teacher, grant to me that I may know who these are, and what law makes them appear so eager to cross over, as in this dim light I perceive they are. And he to me,
These things will be made clear to thee, as soon as on the dismal strand of Acheron we shall have stayed our steps.
Thereat, with shame suffused and downcast eyes, and fearing lest my talking might annoy him, up to the river I abstained from speech. Behold then, coming toward us in a boat, an aged man, all white with ancient hair, who shouted,
Woe to you, ye souls depraved! Give up all hope of ever seeing heaven. I come to take you to the other shore, into eternal darkness, heat, and cold. And thou that yonder art, a living soul, withdraw thee from those fellows that are dead.
But when he saw that I did not withdraw, he said,
By other roads and other ferries shalt thou attain a shore to pass across, not here. A lighter boat must carry thee.
to him my leader,
Charon, be not vexed. Thus is it yonder willed, where there is power to do whatever is willed, so ask no more.
thereat were quieted the woolly cheeks of that old boatman of the murky swamp, who round about his eyes had wheels of flame. Those spirits, though, who nude and weary were, their colour changed, and gnashed their teeth together, as soon as they had heard the cruel words. They kept blaspheming God, and their own parents, the human species, and the place and time, and seed of their conception and their birth. Then each and all of them drew on together, weeping aloud, to that accursed shore which waits for every man that fears not God. Charon the demon with his ember eyes makes beckoning signs to them, collects them all, and with his oar beats whoso takes his ease. Even as in autumn leaves detach themselves, now one and now another, till their branch sees all its stripped off clothing on the ground, so, one by one, the evil seed of Adam cast themselves down that river bank at signals, as doth a bird to its recalling lure. Thus o'er the dusky waves they wend their way, and ere they land upon the other side, another crowd collects again on this.
My son,
The courteous teacher said to me,
all those that perish in the wrath of God from every country come together here, and eager are to pass across the stream, because justice divine so spurs them on, that what was fear is turned into desire. A good soul never goes across from hence. If Charon therefore findeth fault with thee, well canst thou now know what his words imply.
The darkling plain, when this was ended, quaked so greatly that the memory of my terror bathes me even now with sweat. The tear-stained ground gave forth a wind whence flashed vermilion light, which in me overcame all consciousness, and down I fell like one whom sleep o'ertakes.
End of Inferno Canto 3.